All right, welcome back. We are hmm, we are ACI course 7, finishing class 8 and moving on to class 9. It is February 16, 2025. Let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. And see them there with you. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you, smiling at you with their holy great compassion, their wisdom radiating from them, that beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Feel how much you would like to be able to help them. Recognize how the worldly ways we try fall short. How wonderful it will be when we can also help them in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they will go on to stop their distress forever. Deep down, we know this is possible. Learning about karma and emptiness, we get glimpses into how it's possible. And so I invite you to grow that wish into a longing. And that longing into an intention. Then turn your mind back to your precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know. what we need to learn yet, what we need to do yet, to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please teach us that. And they are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands, and we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer to make our promise. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of every single other. So we've left off last class at vow number 27 through 34. These are the Bodhisattva vows that when we do the deeds that we're pledging to avoid with this vow, when we do those deeds instead of keep the vow, instead of avoid them, we damage our perfection of wisdom, meaning we damage the seeds that we're gathering directed towards reaching the perfection of wisdom. Once we have the perfection of wisdom, we still do these behaviors to help reinforce it, but I don't know that you can really damage your perfection of wisdom once you have it, except by some very severe wrong state of mind. So 24 to 34. 27 to 34. Number 27 says, I will avoid rejecting the Hinayana by saying that bodhisattvas shouldn't study, listen to, or follow the Hinayana teachings. So we had a root vow that was similar. And that root vow was broken when we rejected the whole system. That Hinayana system, it doesn't work. It won't take you to enlightenment. It won't take you to nirvana. But this vow, the secondary vow, is when we say, oh, as a bodhisattva, one doesn't need the Hinayana background. And it seems absurd that this would even be a vow, because we've been so well trained about the different levels of understanding of emptiness and dependent origination and the different motivations for being on a spiritual path. We had the seeds to learn about those details right from the beginning. But it doesn't mean everybody who is Buddhist or has met Buddhism has received such detailed sequential teachings as we have. And if one had the seeds to meet the Mahayana, like as a non-Buddhist, and you meet the Mahayana Buddhism, and then that's all you know, because that's all you've learned. And then you hear somebody's studying that Hinayana stuff, right? You might say, oh, I'm Mahayana, I don't need that. So apparently, it's a risk. And so we still would want to be careful with our opinion about the level of practice that we practice and the value of the Hinayana teachings, the lower school teachings. Geshe-la said a good Mahayana Buddhist will spend many years studying the Hinayana system so that they have a strong foundation for the Mahayana system that they practice. So our 5 lifetime lay vows and our ordained vows are all vows from within the Hinayana level system. So we do need to know it and understand it well. Logic teachings come to us from emptiness dependent origin level 2 school. That's not Mahayana. So it's like, be careful. We take a vow to avoid rejecting the Hinayana by saying bodhisattvas should not study, listen to, or follow it. Then that leads to number 28. I will avoid devoting myself to Hinayana study and practice at the expense of my Mahayana. Right, so having just said a Mahayanist might spend years studying the Hinayana, so their foundation is strong for their Mahayana practice. But we break the vow if we let go of the Mahayana or put it to the back and focus more on our Hinayana study and practice. Like losing sight of our Mahayana motivation because of our study, deep study of the Hinayana. Then vow 29 is I will avoid making efforts in non-Buddhist texts. And it's like, what? At all? No, any non-Buddhist text, I break my vow if I read or study. And, thank goodness they don't mean that. There are reasons why we need to learn and study non-Buddhist things, right? We have careers, we have families, we have other obligations that we need to learn how to do and how to do well. And that requires study and probably ongoing study. in order to keep our skills fresh, etc. So this is not saying once you decide you are a bodhisattva, once you take your bodhisattva vows, you can't do that anymore. This is referring to making efforts, mainly in other spiritual paths, to the point where it distracts you from your effort in further study and practice in your own tradition. We can go and learn about other spiritual paths and even other things non-spiritual, as long to become more knowledgeable so that we can better help other beings in our world. When that study takes us away from our own path, that's when we're getting close to damaging our bodhisattva vows. Geshe-la says it's dangerous because our window of opportunity to study and practice this system is so fragile. He says we have a system that we know works. Well, he knows works. And right, we have faith seeds to believe him. And we've been taught logic in order to strengthen our faith seeds so we are less likely to run out of them. But until we have that direct perception of ultimate reality ourselves, we are still running on, right, our karmic seeds of the goodness of knowing someone who has had that experience. And he reminds us that when you come out of that experience, you have perceived your own past lives, perceived your future life as a Buddha, when you will reach it, what you have to do to reach it. You'll have perceived a Buddha. You will know that the path that you used to get there worked. And you will know that the scriptures about that path all hold truth so that you can rely upon them. And so once one gets to that position, you know, there isn't anybody that could convince you that their system is better, because, right, you've used yours to achieve this gateway to the goal that you had in mind when you experienced it. And if you meet another teaching with similar ripenings, fine, right? You'll have a similar thing happening. Geshe-la's premise is, if you've met this one, you've got one that works. And so if you're going to still look for some other spiritual path or kind of way to access other realities, do it enough to help other people by it, but not so much that it detracts from your own progress in your study of this path. So what breaks the vow is when we lose that balance. I'm learning that in order to be a better Mahayana Buddhist practitioner, so that I can help people in the arenas in which they are, with the intention, of course, of bringing them up, right, to the highest understanding of their own path, right? You're not necessarily out to make everybody Buddhist. All right. Your answer piece asks you, what kind of person can engage in serious study of Hinayana or non-Buddhist teachings and not damage their bodhisattva vow. And it gives us this list that says someone who's intelligent and quick learning, meaning you've learned your own system, and this new system you'll catch on quickly. You're not going to have to spend hours, right, to get the gist of it. So intelligent and quick learning, whose own belief in their own system is so strong that no matter what they learn in this other system, they won't want to change their mind. Whose faith in the Mahayana is based on reasoning. So that would prevent them from losing their faith. And who still spends more time on their own study than they do on studying the other tradition, right? Because of the seeds thing, right? You're planting seeds while you study the other tradition. You're planting seeds while you study your tradition. You want more seeds in your own tradition than in the other. All right. Then vow number 30 is in the case where I must make efforts in a non-Buddhist subject, I will avoid being attracted to it. And it sounds like it means I won't enjoy it, right? I'll do it, but I won't like it. And it doesn't really mean that so much as it means you have this need to study this other thing, but your need is not going looking for another way of reaching your goal. It's not like you're expecting it to give you something more than your own tradition has to offer you, right? To be attracted means I'm expecting something more from it. Okay. All of those vows are behaviors that will protect us from dropping away from this path that teaches the marriage of karma and emptiness, motivated by a heart full of love and compassion for others. Right? All of these behaviors would chip away at our engagement with this Mahayana system. And it could very well be the case that in our own system, our study, our practices, the teachings we receive, we may hear things that don't sit right, or we don't quite understand, or maybe we have the seeds to have the automatic reaction of, that can't be right. And this tradition does not say, once you're in it, you have to believe everything, right? And in fact, it says the opposite. Don't believe it till you've shown yourself, right? It's potential, logically, experientially. So this question on your homework is like, what did Lord Maitreya say to do when we meet a teaching in our own tradition that we don't get, that we don't like, we want to reject it for whatever reason. And we don't have a vow specifically, but Maitreya says, look, be really, really careful not to flatly reject it. The whole thing, the part of the thing, the one who shared it, don't reject, because the seeds we plant in our mind by rejecting even a part of a teaching makes it harder to hear teachings, to hear new stuff, to go higher with our wisdom. So he says, when we meet something we don't understand or don't feel we can yet accept, put it on the shelf, is the term Geshe Michael uses. Set it aside with the intention, I'll come back to this when I get a better foundation. I'll put this on the shelf until I hear more about it. That attitude is just set it aside till later, is protective and helps us continue to keep our bodhisattva vows that help us protect our growing perfection of wisdom, right? Don't reject. Vow 31 says, I will avoid rejecting the greater way, meaning giving up the Mahayana. We already had one of those. We had the root vow. The root vow of rejecting the Mahayana was to say, Buddha didn't teach the Mahayana. Meaning then that the Mahayana teachings are not valid. This secondary vow means to discount or disrespect any of the scriptural collection of the Mahayana by saying these three different things. This part is inferior. This composition is inferior. Sorry, saying four things. This author is inferior. And this part of the teaching won't help living beings. So to say any one of those four about a Mahayana scripture breaks this vow. You know, in a sense, like, who am I to judge? You know, maybe it's hard to understand, or the translation is awkward, or right, but to judge a Mahayana scripture as good or bad, better or worse than another, it's kind of arrogant, wouldn't you say? We don't have to like all the scripture that we read. If we don't think it's good, we're probably misunderstanding something. And you don't have to say, you don't have to verify your opinion by telling somebody else, you know what, this scripture really isn't good. Don't you agree? Right? The reason we do that is because we want to hear somebody agree with us. If you don't need that, just don't say anything to anybody and put that scripture on the shelf with the other ones that we doubt, rather than judge it. You know, by the time we're even talking about a scripture in this way, we've already judged it negatively. Whoops. Right? But don't let it come out your mouth. And stop that thought about it swiftly. And do a 4 powers. Vow 32. I will avoid praising myself and criticizing others. Wait, we already had that one. That's root vow number 1. The root vow, the motivation was out of desire for gain and fame, if you recall. This one, and it was related to you as a Mahayana teacher directed towards another Mahayana teacher, more specifically. This one is like praising our own teachings and criticizing someone else's teachings. And for it to be a secondary root vow, our motivation for praising ourselves or criticizing them is out of anger, pride, self-cherishing, those jealousy, etc. But this one has some exceptions. One exception is that if you are praising the system you are teaching and disproving harmful views or wrong teachings with your debate, like your criticism of the other is debate criticism, and what you're praising is your own system in order to correct the wrong teaching, then you don't break this vow, right? Technically, you are praising self and criticizing other, but it's out of the motivation to correct something, not out of anger, pride, self-cherishing. The second condition where we would not break this vow is if we are trying to positively influence people towards your system. You can brag about it a little, says this exception to the rule. And then the third one is, if you are that high-level bodhisattva with pure motivation and you see that someone needs to be taught a lesson, you might need to praise self and criticize others. Vow 33. I will avoid not going to a Dharma talk out of laziness or pride. So this happens when you know of a Dharma talk that's being held and you just don't go because you don't feel like making the effort, or you don't go because you're too proud, meaning you think it's being taught by someone that you don't consider worthy of your time. Like those two situations. This one has exceptions. If you're sick and you don't go to a Dharma talk, you don't break this vow. If you didn't know about the Dharma talk and you don't go, you don't break the vow. If you suspect the person teaching it doesn't know what they're talking about, you don't have to go. If you've already mastered the subject matter, you don't have to go. And if you are in deep retreat, you don't have to go. Seems to me if you're in deep retreat, you wouldn't know about it, about the teaching going on. And lastly, if going to that teaching would upset your regular Dharma teacher. I don't know the circumstances that might be. So what's not in the exceptions is, I don't feel like it. Somebody's going to be there I don't like, right? Lots of reasons. I don't have the right clothes to wear. All the different reasons we might not go to something when we have the opportunity. And then lastly, for this group, number 34, I will avoid focusing on the vessel and the letters is the phrase. And it's code for disrespecting the Dharma teacher, but more specifically, disrespecting one's own Dharma teacher. To focus on the vessel and the letters means that you are more attracted to the way they present class or what they look like presenting class than what they're teaching in class. In the commentary about this one, though, it says there are 3 ways that we disrespect the teacher. One of them is by not seeing them as a Buddha manifesting to us. And it's like, gads, if that's literal, right? I can't keep this vow. Fortunately, it means less like seeing them with the bump on their head and the webbed fingers, and more considering that someone teaching the Dharma is a manifestation of the teacher, right? Buddha. When the teaching is coming out of their mouth, like think of them as channeling the Buddha is enough to not damage this vow. You know, whether you see them as the Buddha or not, you're realizing the connection that's there. Then second way of damaging this vow is by speaking badly about them. And then third is by being more interested in their presentation than their content. You know, that, I don't know, I don't know, you get it. Right? Rather than going for the wisdom, they're going to share. You're going for the fun, right? Because it's always a fun teaching. So it doesn't mean we can't enjoy the fun. They do it fun on purpose. But if it's the fun that's attracting us and not the teachings, we damage this vow. Okay, that finishes class 8. Now we need to do a racehorse to get through class 9. So the next set of vows are called the offenses against the third kind of morality. So you remember the 3 kinds of morality: the morality of avoiding harming, the morality of gathering goodness, and the morality of doing both of those motivated by the bodhicitta in order to reach total Buddhahood, in order to help all beings learn how to avoid harming, gather goodness with bodhicitta. Right? So this is called the morality of working for others, which is actually the morality that plants the seeds that will take us to our total enlightenment. It's the morality that will help us grow our actual bodhicitta. And when our mind is imbued with bodhicitta, everything we do becomes causes for our Buddhahood. So these vows are all more directly related to behaviors of helping others, right? All those others, you know, weren't really about helping others. It's avoiding these influences in our own mind. But now this batch is about actual things to do, right? To avoid not doing, technically, which tells us what to do. So number 35 says, I will avoid not going to help someone in need. I will avoid failing to go help somebody in need. So it means when we see someone who needs help, we help. That's what it is to be a bodhisattva. And it's not really about the willingness to jump in the river to save the person's life. It's about the low-level radiance. Samanti always says, hold the notice that somebody's got their hands full and hold the door open for them. Notice and step in. Just today, it was so sweet. Smati and I walked to the hardware store, and coming home, he got tired. So we sat down on this rock by the office, and we're just sitting there deciding whether to go straight home or to go play on the swing set. And this big black truck drove by and came back. And they stopped and said, "You guys look tired. Do you want to ride home?" And it's like, Samati goes, "Yes, thank you very much." Because he really was tired. And it's just like, that's the kind of sweet bodhisattva behavior you notice, and then you do something. But it's like, how many people in need do you see on your trip to work each morning? I have to stop and help. If I help the first one, I'll never get to work. Our minds think like that. And we wouldn't be breaking the vow if we don't stop for every single one. But do we even notice? We can always do a little tonglen, right? We can always make a wish. We can always smile at them. We can do something. Doing this vow doesn't mean solving their problem. It just means trying to help in some way. So then they give us a classic list of things people are doing in which they would need our help. Helping someone who's undertaking some kind of a task. Geshe-la says this is especially the glue that holds a Dharma center together. There's always stuff to do at the Dharma center. And when you have, many individuals there on the lookout for what needs doing, each one of whom is willing to step in and help in some way, the seeds that plants is everybody working together to maintain that Dharma center. And it contributes to an upward spiral. So undertaking some kind of task. The next one is helping someone who is traveling. In our society, people hitchhike. And, as a woman, I was always discouraged from picking up hitchhikers because it's dangerous. So I never did. It always frightened me a little bit. But it would be that kind of a scenario. But not only that, helping someone who's trying to learn a language. Helping someone who's trying to learn a new skill, as long as the skill is not harmful to another. Right? Particularly a livelihood skill is what they're talking about here. Helping someone in danger of losing their property. Again, as long as it does not endanger yourself or others, to help them protect their property. Helping someone who's trying to fix a split in a group. Helping someone who's planning a special virtuous event. And helping someone who's undertaking any kind of virtuous deed. And then there's a long list of exceptions. And this vow, number 35, many of the vows coming next will say, and the exceptions are the same as to vow 35. So cut and paste this list, right? Every time it says that. So that this vow 35 is I will avoid failing to help someone when I see that they need help. We don't so fail if we're sick, if we've already committed ourselves to somebody else, if we're busy with something more virtuous than what they need help with, if we can refer them to someone who could help them better than we could, then we do that. If we know they are not able to benefit from our help, or we don't have the ability to give the help that they need, we don't break the vow. If they have some other means for getting assistance, we don't break the vow by saying we can't help, go to them. If our helping would create more problems than would help, if we're the high-level bodhisattva and they need to be taught a lesson, if we would break a pratimoksha vow by helping them, and if it would upset a lot of people for them to see you help this other in this way, then that's an exception. So now, of course, with all of these, it's our own judgment, right? It's our own recognition of the situation and who's watching and what we're capable of doing. And so we act from our own level of understanding and ability to the best of our ability, right? The Buddhas are not looking down on us, judging us. All of these guidelines are for our own use, right? They're not so strict and heavy that we should feel like, oh man, bodhisattva vows. They're meant to make life easier. So we study and process them and imagine what it would be like being someone whose habit is to be looking for these different opportunities to help, understanding whether I'm the one to help or find somebody else to help, how to negotiate all of this such that it can be an enjoyable way of life versus something that feels burdensome. This particular vow, number 35, is the one Geshe-la calls show by example vow, the bodhisattva vow that helps us show by example what it is to be a Mahayana Buddhist, whether people know that's it or not, right? That couple that stopped and picked us up, as far as I know, they are not Buddhists. They're Canadian, hooray, but they're, I don't know what they are. They're kind, special people. Number 36. I will avoiding serving the sick. Right? Get the double negative. The habit we're overcoming is to not go help somebody who's sick. For all the different reasons we don't go help. So as a bodhisattva, if I learn somebody's sick, I want to do something to try to help them. And there are exceptions to the rule, right? There's always somebody sick. If you're not a nurse, what can you do? Well, you could go empty their garbage for them. You could, right? A lot of things we could do. But the exceptions is if you're sick, you don't break the vow by not going. If you can't help, if your time is committed to something else, if helping them would upset other people, or if you can refer them to someone else, right? Send somebody else to help them. If they already have other help, and if they can still help themselves. And then the last one is if your spiritual work would be interrupted, meaning like you're in retreat. So the commentary, Jetson-Koppa's commentary at some point, like asks the question, once we know these vows, why wouldn't we follow them? Like if it were so automatic that we would keep these vows, we wouldn't have to learn all about them and we wouldn't have to track them. We would just learn and we would do it. But apparently we don't. And Jetson-Koppa says, why do you suppose that is? And he explains a topic called the two states of mind and those two other states of mind. Show on my computer to get here. Okay, so he says, the reason we don't keep our vows when we don't is most commonly out of having one or the other of these two states of mind, narsem and kontro. Narsem is the desire to hurt someone. Like it's more than ill will. It's this intention to get them back, the intention to hurt. And kontro is anger. So together, these two are called semni. It means the two states of mind. They are strong, negative mental afflictions, active mental afflictions, a state of mind that colors our decision-making. The narsem, the wanting to hurt somebody, is it makes us do something, right, that would be unkind. Kontro, anger, is that powerful emotion, that whatever it's gonna color our reaction to the situation. That usually the reaction is not kindness in the face of anger. So we can get a sense of these states of mind strongly take over our ability to rationalize a behavior choice. Like we really don't even rationalize a behavior choice. We just act from them and then rationalize it after the fact. These are called those two states of mind. Why do we break any of these vows? Out of semni, those two states of mind, one or the other, right? Maybe both, right? You're so angry at somebody, you want to hurt them, right? That would be hugely powerful. Casual example was, you have a friend who's sick, and well, I shouldn't even say a friend. You know someone who's sick, and you don't like them so much, and so there's no feeling to want to go and help them feel better, which means there is a feeling that you don't mind if they go on feeling badly. Or maybe you're flat out angry with them. And I'm angry with them. I don't want to go help them. You know, that's part of what it is to be angry, unfortunately. Then there are two other states of mind called semshenyi. Shen means other. So semni, other. Those two other states of mind that also influence our behavior. But these two other states of mind are considered not afflicted states of mind, in that they aren't these strong, active, engaged mental affliction. These two other states of mind are lelo and nyumle. So everybody seems to know lelo, laziness, out of laziness. And nyumle is more like a spiritual laziness. So plain old laziness is, I just don't feel like it, right? Some lack of enjoyment in doing that goodness, and enjoyment or satisfaction in not doing things. Lelo and Yomle are both like the opposite of the fourth perfection, the perfection of joyous effort, having a good time doing our avoiding harming, gathering goodness, and doing both, motivated by the wish to reach total Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. This kind of lelo, laziness, it's not an active negative mental affliction, right? It's just, I don't want to, I don't feel like it. Is it an afflicted state of mind? Absolutely, because it's based on ignorance and self-cherishing. So it's not that it's a non-afflicted state of mind, but it's not the active negativity that the other two, right? The first two, the semni state of mind. Nyomle is more specific to not considering the vows important enough to keep. We don't take them seriously. We don't respect them enough. We really don't recognize that they are, in fact, the way to plant the seeds in our mind to gather the goodness that will direct us towards the goal of Buddhahood. If we don't really understand that, they are like our vacation plans with our tickets and our Airbnb reservation and everything. Like, that's so precious. When you've spent your money and you're ready to go, it's like, wow, this is the most important thing. Our vows are like that in our vacation plans to reach Buddhahood. You know, everything that we need in there. When we don't take our vows seriously, we don't make diligent effort to change our habitual behavior. And as a result, we don't plant our mental seeds with enough change to be able to experience angels in our world. Yeah, to experience those little instances of magic that help us go, oh, maybe this system is really working. You know, when some strange coincidence happens that's in your favor. And it's like, whoa, I see how behavior I did, a couple of years ago is ripening as that couple picking us up. To connect the dot in these little ways helps strengthen our reliance upon our vowed behavior. And it's like right at some point, we just start and try keeping our vows. And as we do get the little bits of magic, we get the feedback that says, well, maybe I'll try harder. And then we have periods where things go dry. I'm trying so hard and nothing's changing. There's no magic. Probably we're just not noticing the magic. Like the magic got ordinary. And now we need better magic before we notice it. It's a common thing. If we take our vows lightly, they will take us lightly. We won't get much effect. These bodhisattva vows are the behaviors to avoid, and so to do the opposite of, that create the causes for your experience of Buddha you and Buddha paradise emanating someday. When we really understand that, they'll become pretty important to us. Let's take a break. Time for a break. Gio needs a break. Okay, number 37. I will avoid not trying to stop someone's suffering, either mental or physical, when it's obvious to me. So if we are aware of someone's physical or mental suffering as a bodhisattva, we're required to make some effort to help relieve it. And again, our minds say, but everybody's suffering in some way. I'll never get home. And Geshe-la's comment was, right, and what if Asanga had just stepped over that dog and gone on his way? He probably would not have met Lord Maitreya. And then we wouldn't have the 5 books, and then. But there's always something that we can do. And the beauty of Tonglen is that the default mode can be Tonglen. It has exceptions. The exceptions to avoiding not trying to stop someone's suffering are the same as in vow 36. Vow 38. I will avoid not trying to reason with someone who is acting carelessly karmically. Now this one's slippery. If the person involved knows about karma and emptiness, then it would make sense if we saw them doing something that was karmically dangerous, that we could go to them and, with the big heart of a bodhisattva, say, I'm really concerned because this is what I'm seeing. And if you're seeing anything similar, can we talk about, is there some other way that you could achieve what you're trying to achieve that would plant seeds differently for you? If it's someone that, doesn't know anything about karma and emptiness, but might be interested, that would be a different situation. And if it's somebody who isn't interested, doesn't know, and isn't interested, thank you very much. How do we be the bodhisattva with this vow and not be interfering? And we also have the advice that you don't share what you know until somebody's asked. But how do you get them to ask you what you know if they don't know that you know something? You kind of have to hint around. So, for me, this is one of the hardest ones. If we're in a situation, though, where we are seeing somebody harm themselves in their attempt to protect themselves, our heart would want to step in and try to help them stop harming the other, and help them find some other way to achieve what their goal is. It wouldn't necessarily have to involve convincing them of karma and emptiness, but we could try to influence them in a different way to achieve whatever it is that they're trying to achieve. So this one has its own exceptions. We don't break this vow, meaning we can not try to reason with someone if we're just not capable of dissuading them. And we wouldn't really know until we tried, but if it's someone we've tried before and it hasn't worked, maybe we can use our best judgment and try to influence in some other way. If we can refer them to someone who is more capable, if we see that they'll realize their error themselves, if we know they have a spiritual teacher who will correct them, if we think they would continue to do the behavior just to spite us, if we know they won't listen to us, or if you're the high-level bodhisattva and you see that you can teach them a lesson. Number 39. I will avoid failing to repay someone who has helped me. So this might happen if we just don't consider the things that people do for us being things that we need to repay. Like we're taking things for granted or assuming that we deserve those things. It's a bit like the nyomle, just disregarding the situation. And then the other reason we might fail to repay someone is just out of laziness, just not thinking it's important to repay someone's kindness. Right? So this vow in particular can be influenced by those two other states of mind. Or we may decide not to repay them because in repaying them, we should repay them more than what they did for us, and we don't have that kind of resource. And we might not repay someone because we don't like them. They did something nice for us, but who cares? For a bodhisattva, that's not, whether we like or dislike the other is not a factor. Are you catching on to that for bodhisattvas? And then always these situations are to the best of our ability to discern how someone else has helped us, and then have this sense of looking for an opportunity to pay them back. And of course, it doesn't really have to be this value for that value for that value. It just anything to acknowledge that they offered a kindness, to offer a kindness back to them. Then they point out that the kindness that is most important, that we want to cultivate the wish to repay, is the kindness of our lineage lamas. The kindness of Geshe Michael for devoting his life to making these teachings available to us in such a way that we can share them with others. He received that from the kindness of his teacher, who received it from the kindness of his teacher, right? Going all the way back. Without these teachings, what would we understand? What we'd know. So those teachers teach selflessly for all of us. They give up their conventional lives to help us. And so we owe them a lot. And any little way that we can serve them, they don't need it. They don't want it. They want us to see ourselves respecting, honoring, valuing, so that our seeds can be planted in such a way to receive more, right? And then share more as well. And so, of course, what they really want from us, the way we pay them back, is to practice what they teach us, right? Do our homeworks, quizzes, meditations, try it on for size, check our vowed behaviors, right? Try this behavior on for size. So there are exceptions to this. I will avoid failing to repay the kindness. If we are waiting for the proper opportunity to repay the person, our vow isn't broken while we wait. But waiting sincerely, like you have a plan and it just hasn't come together yet. If you are a high-level bodhisattva and with great love, you need to teach them a lesson. Or if that person would be embarrassed or uncomfortable if you did repay them, or if they really would prefer it if you didn't. And again, it would be to the best of our judgment about them and our relationship with them. Excuse me. Number 40. I will avoid failing to stop another's grief. So grief usually means that feeling of loss, right, when a loved one passes. But it could be the grief over loss of material things, the grief over loss of a relationship or a job. And here all the exceptions from the vow number 35 apply. If we're sick, etc. And again, it's like, can we relieve somebody's grief? Technically not. Our effort to try is the best that we can do. And when someone's grieving, for someone to care enough to try to cheer them up a little bit, that itself is a little bit of relief. Temporary, as soon as you go away, right? Their grief will probably flood back in for a while. But the effort to try is what we're talking about here. Number 41, I will avoid not giving a material assistance to someone who needs it. There's another where we had a root vow that said the same thing, but the root vow was broken when our failing to give was out of possessiveness for the object. Possessiveness for things is like a terrible virus in a bodhisattva. Like it's just sick and broken. The secondary vow is motivated by anything other than possessiveness. So any other reason that we fail to give material assistance to someone in need damages a secondary vow. So out of ill will, out of anger, out of jealousy, out of not caring, out of disrespecting the vows, out of those two states of mind or those two other states of mind, right? Just refusing to share when there's a need, right? When there's an opportunity. Now, the exceptions are if you don't have what they need, you don't break this vow by not sharing it with them, right? You don't have to go out and buy the thing that they need in order to protect this vow. If you have it, you share. If what they want or need is harmful for them or for others. The vow says, especially if it would be harmful to the king. And, I don't know really specifically what that means because we don't have that yet. Then if it would break your pratimoksha vows for not much benefit, it says, because we had that other vow that says the willingness to break the first 7 in order to help another if you're that high level bodhisattva. Then last one, if you are the high level bodhisattva and you need to teach them a lesson. Number 42, I will avoid failing to take care of the needs of my students. So traditionally, a person would present themselves to the monastery, to a particular teacher in the monastery, and say, please take me as your student. And if they get accepted, then that teacher takes the responsibility for that person's needs, their living needs, their material needs, their study needs, their spiritual needs. And then the teacher needs to, generate sponsorship for the expenses necessary for the material needs of that student. And then the student has responsibilities themselves to help the teacher in their teaching and sponsorship, etc., fundraising, etc. So it's not just a one-way street. To take on a student and not make sure that they're comfortable enough, safe and comfortable enough to study. If you're the bodhisattva, you break this vow, right? You have the bodhisattva vows and you have students, then it's your bodhisattva responsibility to make sure they are able, right? And safe and comfortable. Geshe-la says it's not a service to the student to let them just grub off of the system. Right? We really don't have a system that you can grub off of. But even within a Dharma center, it can happen. Anyway, so there are exceptions. If you yourself are too sick, if you need to teach them a lesson, if you would break your prati moksha code in taking care of them, if you know they are capable of supporting themselves, and if they are incorrigible and would never make progress, we would not fail if we failed to take care of their needs. So this needs is both material needs and spiritual needs. Once you take on a student, right, you're making this pledge. As a Mahayana teacher, you're making this pledge. Number 43, I will avoid failing to get along with others. They say either out of laziness or dislike of the other, we don't make any effort to reach out to someone we don't get along with. So it doesn't mean you have to like everybody. It means we care about their needs and situation as much, regardless of how much or how little we like them. So this vow is saying, if there's someone you don't like, it's okay to admit that to yourself, but then make ourselves interact with them in some way. There are exceptions, of course. If you know that by reaching out to try to get along, it's just not going to work, right? They're going to pick fights, or you're going to pick a fight. You just know it'll go badly. If you know they won't cooperate, it would just get worse. You don't have to go. If you're sick, if getting along with them would mean you'd have to engage in something harmful, you don't have to do it. If they would get angry by you approaching them, if it would break our pratimoksha vows, if the exception says, if they were a teacher teaching spiritual wrong things, you don't have to go and try to get along with them, right? You would go and try to set the teaching right. And then if you're the high level bodhisattva and you need to teach a lesson. Geshe said, when we reach out to try to get along with them, it does not mean that we do so by acting like they act. Because probably the reason we don't like them is because they act in ways that we don't like. And so this is not saying that you become like them to get along with them. Number 44, I will avoid failing to praise someone's good qualities or something good they have said. So this is the opposite of jealousy. If we see someone with good qualities, usually we feel a little, I don't know, negative about it. And we're not about to point out their good qualities to somebody else, because our jealousy would rather point out something negative. And at least, maybe we're smart enough to not do that, but we don't automatically point out other people's goodnesses. But what a powerful set of good seeds it is to point out the goodness of others to others, right? This isn't going to them and saying, wow, you're so amazing. This is going to somebody else and saying, have you heard that one, that teacher? Whoa, they really have such clear insight, right? You can feel how positive those seeds are, to praise others to others. Opposite of ill will. It says here opposite of jealousy, but it's opposite. It stops ill will in its tracks. The niemes, the exceptions to the rule, is if you're sick, if you're waiting for a better opportunity, if the person you're speaking the good qualities about to someone else is there and they would be uncomfortable. If there's nothing true to say, oh, sad, you know, we can always find something. Wow, your shoes match your handbag. Like we can find something to say. If you know they would get pride or inflated, if you're the high level bodhisattva and you need to teach them a lesson, and if you are in the position of needing to correct an incorrect teacher of spirituality, you don't need to praise their good qualities. Although you might want to find a good quality to praise first and then help them see what's being mistaken and then praise their good qualities at the end too. You know, isn't that called the sandwich? Number 45. I will avoid failing to cut a person off when it's necessary. So to cut someone off has three meanings. One of them is to chastise them when it's necessary. The second is to punish them when it's necessary. And the third is to expel them when it's necessary. And these are generally difficult situations when you are the one who's responsible for a group. I mean, these are specifically directed towards a spiritual center, and there's somebody who's misbehaving, and you've tried all these different ways to get them to realign their behavior, and it's just not happening. At some point, it may be necessary for you to just cut them off, meaning, you know, establish that they are no longer welcome within the group. If we're not the one in charge of the group, this isn't our job. So there are exceptions. If there's a person who we are in charge of the group and that person needs to be cut off, but we're waiting for a better opportunity, we're not breaking the vow while we wait. If they'll never listen to you anyway, if they'll be self-correcting, like, let's just wait this out a little bit longer, we don't break this vow. And if expelling them would cause a major split, then you don't break the vow by not cutting them off. Hopefully none of us will ever be in that kind of situation. Okay, so we're at vow 46. It's the last of the Bodhisattva's secondary vow. And Geshe says, once you know them all, it's much more serious to not behave according to them, whether you formally have vows or not yet. So he said to his group, are you sure you want to finish? It's like somehow it doesn't quite take until we've got all 46. I don't quite understand that, to be honest with you. But anybody who doesn't want them all, click off now or forever hold your peace until you are Buddha. Okay, number 46. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. I will avoid failing to use my supernatural powers when it's necessary. So now this one has an oral tradition explanation, meaning there are certain things that we learn only spoken from our teacher, not written. This one is that if we have the power to do miracles, our lineage says, don't do it. Don't use your miracle powers. Don't talk about them. Don't admit that you have them. The reason is that the person that you are doing the miracle for, if they need the miracle to be attracted or held or inspired to the path, they will just need a bigger miracle later. And you haven't helped them. Like miracles beget faith, but they don't beget the logical reasoning that leads to intelligent faith. And that faith will burn out if you don't keep providing them with reasons to keep it, to grow it. This vow says that when the time comes, and it would really make a difference to the circumstance involved, then we must use our powers, right? So we've received the lineage instruction, don't use those powers. And this vow says, except in these very certain important circumstances. And then to not use them breaks the vow, right? We must use those powers when it's necessary, when it's for the highest and best of everyone involved. Sometimes the miracles that are done are experienced as unpleasantly. Sometimes miracles are experienced pleasantly. We tend to think, oh, miracles are, these beyond explaining good things that happen. But beyond explaining unpleasant things can be miracles too. To have spiritual powers is a side effect of strong, wise Buddhist practices. And they are things like being able to travel long distances, swift long distances, to be able to see through things, to be able to hear far away. There's 8 main ones. I can't rattle them off. They're useful tools, but they're not attainments to show off. They're just side effects of our progress and our path. So then lastly, in the list of Bodhisattva vows, it finally says, etc., meaning there's some extra stuff to consider. And you'll find it in your reading, the various extra advices about Bodhisattva behavior. They then give us a list of what are called offenses against the wish for enlightenment, meaning things that we do that damage our bodhicitta. Our bodhicitta, the wish to reach total Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And they give this summary. My notes has 7 things. These aren't new behaviors, but they're like pointing out the different things we've talked about. So 1, failing to support those who deserve it with dharma or material things damages our bodhicitta. Number 2, failing to let go of anger when someone hurts us. Number 3, discriminating between people, meaning liking some. No, I just said you're allowed to like and dislike, but treating people differently based on whether you like them or not like them. Right? Just because you don't like them doesn't mean they're not good. Does not mean they're bad. So this discriminating between means I will treat them different than this one. That's the discrimination. The negative judgment that we have going on in our minds all the time, if you're like me, is chipping away at our bodhicitta. We're growing our bodhicitta, and our mental criticism is negating it at the same time. It's simply a habit that we can become more aware of and switch. Either turn it off, harder said than done, or switch it to the positive. Yeah, they're stupid, but their wife really loves them. Yay, they've got some good qualities. Find something to counter the negative. Number 4, failing to take ourselves to a spiritual teacher when they're available. Number 5, failing to learn and contemplate the Dharma that's available. Number 6, failing to think about others as we use objects. Meaning, as we use anything, a bodhisattva would be thinking, I'm helping all beings by doing what I'm doing. It's like, how am I helping all beings by doing my dishes? It's like, doesn't matter if you can answer that question or not, just think it. Right? And then come up with some reason that it's true. It helps grow our bodhicitta. Geshe-la explained everything that we do, we are using up intense amounts of karma. We're planting new as well. And if, as we're doing anything, no matter how ordinary, we're thinking about benefiting others, as we do this ordinary response to the karmas that we're burning off, we're replanting those same deeds, but now influenced with our wish to help all beings. So the seeds that are being planted are being replanted differently than they ordinarily would have been. So anything we're doing, I'm brushing my teeth in order to help others, right? In order to bodhicitta, in order to become a Buddha so that I can really help others. So we're trying to make this mantra for the benefit of all, be coloring everything that we do. Number 7, failing to think of benefiting others as we do the good deeds that we do. Right? So number 6 was any of the ordinary stuff we do. And then when we go to actually do something particularly helpful, to be on that automatic pilot and not including, I'm doing this in order to help all beings in that ultimate way someday. We don't have a vow for that, but to have that in mind helps grow our bodhicitta. It is our bodhicitta growing. So even as we're sitting in class, right, I'm listening to this teaching in order to help others better. That's why we start out with that setup, in order to at least have this overall idea when we first get started. It seems superficial at first, But as we do it, our understanding of this thing called bodhicitta grows. And then it has more meaning as we hold it in mind, as we do those ordinary things, right? So we really can't help anyone in any ultimate way until we gain the wisdom and the omniscience through which we can help others end their suffering. We can't reach that without deeply wanting to help every single existing being, not leaving anyone out. So our wish that everything we do could become a cause for me to reach the ability to help everyone in that deep and ultimate way grows into perceiving ourselves as a being who can do that. Right? It starts with a wish. As we study, this term bodhicitta will grow in meaning for us, or whatever term you are choosing to use. May it benefit all beings, or for the benefit of all beings, or for Buddhahood for all. Find something that triggers in your own heart, right? The thought process of, because things have no nature, the nature they seem to have as a result of my behavior. And so how I interact with others and the state of mind with which I do creates the causes for the circumstances of my future. It's too much to be thinking all the time. So we trigger all of that with some word or phrase. All right. I have one more topic. And I see glazed over faces, and I'm sorry, but I'm just going to finish class 9. So the next topic is called the 4 black deeds and the 4 white deeds. The black and white deeds. The black and white deeds completes the Bodhisattva vows package. And when we decide we are going to take our Bodhisattva vows, we are accepting the whole package. Actually, it includes the 5 lifetime lay vows, if one hasn't got those yet either. So these black and white deeds, the black deeds are deeds that damage the power of our bodhicitta, and the white deeds are deeds that strengthen it, so that the Mahayana teachings will come to us faster and earlier in our next life. Right? So Bodhisattva vows go along with us. The open teaching Mahayana takes a long time to create the causes for our Buddhahood. So we're looking forward to next lives to continue to make our progress. Right? We're shooting for seeing emptiness directly during this life or at the passing of this life. And then we want a human rebirth, and a human rebirth in the Dharma, so that we meet it very early in life and can renew our vows very swiftly. These 4, to avoid the 4 black ones and do the 4 white ones, are how we influence ourselves in this life to ensure that we stay in the system in the future. Those seeds planted well will even help the faster method ripen sooner. So it's not that, oh, once I'm a tantrika, I don't need to do those anymore because, right, I'm going to finish in this lifetime. It's like wrong. We still rely on our earlier vows and behaviors in order for the higher way to do what the higher way claims it can do. All right, so the 4 black deeds and their white deeds as their antidotes. Number 1, the black deed is knowingly trying to deceive our lama in anything or any way. The lama knows what you're doing. We can't pull the wool over their eyes. Our own mind is watching when we try. Whether it's a flat out, deception, or we're trying to make an excuse for something, right? We're trying to wiggle out of something, all the different reasons why we might deceive our lama, try to deceive the lama. The seeds that we plant in our minds by trying, right? First of all, says, I don't believe they're a Buddha and that they really know what's best for me. I don't really believe they're omniscient so that they know what I'm doing, right? If we believe that, there'd be nothing, right, that we could say deceptively. Sorry, I got myself distracted. If we don't believe that they love us unconditionally, we would try to make excuses for something. Lots of different reasons why we might act in a way trying to somehow deceive them. The karma means we won't see teachers in the future. The karma planted means we won't be able to trust teachings that come to us. The karma is we won't be believed, right? We won't be able to share with others. They won't believe what we say. They won't be interested in what we say. All the results of deception. So the white deed, the antidote, is to never speak a lie to any being, even in jest. Right? If we never lie to anybody ever, not even ourselves, we'll never get close to deceiving our lama. Number 2, the black deed of causing anyone to regret something virtuous that they've done. The white deed is the opposite. Try to cultivate others to the bodhisattva ideal. So rather than getting someone to, regret a goodness, we're encouraging them to do more and more kindnesses for higher and higher reasons. Number 3, the black deed of saying something unpleasant to a bodhisattva out of anger. Right? We heard before, a moment of anger directed at a bodhisattva destroys our root of virtue. Our lineage points out, do we know who is and who isn't a bodhisattva? Oops, right, okay. So the antidote is a practice called see the purity. Dak Nang Jorwa, I didn't write it on my list, sorry. To see the purity means to always be thinking that because of emptiness and karma, there's something deeper going on here that I can't see directly. I'm experiencing things appearing in the way that they do, but I know that from their own side, they're blank, that my karma is ripening me to see what's happening here. The reason why this is happening, every detail is coming from some cause and I just can't understand it yet. Every experience is a perfect reflection of my mind's own past deed. So it's possible that everything and everyone is really trying to make me happy. And I'm the only one who can't see it that way. Geshe-la calls it a dharma paranoia. They're all out to help me. And I just see myself, surrounded by jerks. And it just feels really like pulled back and forth. Everyone's out to help me reach my enlightenment as quickly as possible. It just looks to me like they're annoying, irritating, selfish slobs. And it cracks up against our belief in the self-existent other. Their qualities in them, from them, because who wants to take responsibility for that jerk? Right? We don't want to. That's why this is a struggle. Maybe all these beings and everything they do are messages sent to me by my teacher. Would we react differently to situations and others if we had that experience? Oh man, it looks that way to me, but it must be a guidance from my teacher. It's hard. It counteracts saying something, the urge to say something unpleasant to a bodhisattva out of anger. Because the bodhisattva that you're mad at, right, is the message from your holy teacher helping you get enlightened as quickly as possible. And saying something unpleasant to that being is the wrong thing to do. That's the opposite of what the message is supposed to be for us. Okay. Number 4, the black deed is to be devious, dishonest, deceitful towards any sentient being with a bad motivation. And the bad motivation is without any sense of personal responsibility for their enlightenment. Ouch. Right? Any kind of dishonesty towards another and not thinking of being responsible for their total enlightenment. Like, how many moments are we thinking we are responsible for the other person's enlightenment? Oh, the white deed is be totally honest and straightforward with everyone we meet. Because that prevents us from ever being devious or dishonest or deceitful. So imagine being incapable of lying, incapable of giving an intentional impression of yourself that's how do I word it? That's to influence another in a way that you wouldn't otherwise influence them. Notice that in these 4 black deeds, white deeds, honesty is mentioned twice. Lack of honesty is mentioned twice. And the opposite of lack of honesty then is 2 of the 4 white deeds. It's something to think about. Total honesty is difficult. We really have to think hard about what it means. Okay, believe it or not, we finished class 9. So now, sorry, you've got 2 homeworks. Finish 8, do 9. all because we wanted to help that other person in that deep and ultimate way. And that's a great, great goodness. So please be happy with yourself. I'm sorry it was just a dry list, but planted great seeds. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hands. Recall your own precious holy guide. See how happy they are with you. Feel your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please, please stay close, to continue to guide you, help you, inspire you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it. And then carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. Their love, their compassion, their wisdom. It feels so good. We want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it. By the power of the goodness that we've just done, may all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the true ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person, to share it with everyone you love, to share it with every existing being everywhere. See them all filled with happiness, filled with loving kindness, filled with wisdom. And may it be so. All righty, good job. Bodhisattva bounds.